Welcome back. It's 3 decades since the deadly Waco siege, but for Martin King, it's as real as yesterday. He can still hear cult leader David Koresh's wild rantings in his head. Marty joins me again from Melbourne. Marty, how did you get this interview? Because you were the only journalist from anywhere in the world who got inside that compound, spoke one-on-one to David Koresh. How?
Deb, it was a matter of a simple phone call. We rang him and said, could we come across to Waco, Texas and tell your story? And then we mentioned the magic word, and the magic word was Australia, because he loved Australia. He'd been here 3 times. A couple of months each time he stayed. And essentially he came to Australia to recruit followers for his cult in Texas.
And what was your first impression of David Koresh when you met him?
I'm not sure about my first impression of him. He was an angry man when I first met him. It was his impression of me. He didn't like me, Deb. He said to me, he expected a female journalist to go to Waco, and clearly I wasn't a female, and he wasn't happy. And he said to me, and I quote, "You're an ugly man, why would I be interviewed by you?" And then we had a discussion for a couple of minutes. He said, you know what, meet me at the Waco Hilton at 8 o'clock tonight, and I will see if you're worthy to do my story.
Wow. And then you met him for dinner, and hindsight we know is a beautiful thing, but looking back, that was a dinner with a monster.
It was a dinner with a monster, and he had other monsters with him. He turned up with 3 or 4 of these really huge bodyguards, big muscly guys, and he called them his mighty men, and they were his little kind of army inside his army, if you like. And these were the guys who threatened us over the 2 days we were there, kept telling us inside the compound, you won't leave here alive. You know that, don't you? You won't leave here alive. But back to the dinner, Koresh, he's not the sort of guy who talks to you. He's the sort of guy who talks at you. And he ranted at me for about 2 or 3 hours. And then the most incredible thing happened. The young waiter who was serving us through the night walked over to Koresh and said, "Sir, I have seen the light. Can I come to Mount Carmel tomorrow?" Mount Carmel was where the cult headquarters was. Koresh said, "Yeah, sure, turn up tomorrow."
Goodness me, recruiting in the restaurant, unbelievable. So
well,
before
Deb, that is charisma.
That's it. So before you entered the compound, in light of the threats that you'd received at the dinner, did you take, and the crew, any special security precautions?
Well, we had to, because we went to the Waco Police and also the Waco Herald Tribune, the newspaper there, the big newspaper in town, and we told them what we were doing, and they said, "You're crazy going in there. These people are dangerous. You don't know what's going to happen." So we came up with a plan that at 5 o'clock, we went there at 8 o'clock in the morning, at 5 o'clock at night, if we hadn't called the editor of the local newspaper, he was going to contact the sheriff who would come and get us.
Wow. And you went in and you didn't sort of hold back. You asked Koresh some very hard and potentially dangerous questions as well. Were you worried how he might respond?
We were worried for the whole 2 days we were there. The crew and I and the producer kept having little chats about what we were going to do, how we were going to ask him the questions about, was he a pedophile? Do you have a deadly arsenal of weapons here? Do you have hand grenades? Do you have ammunition? And we decided we would do it right at the very end before we left. And as the light was fading, we hit him with those questions. I must admit, he answered them pretty well. He just total denial, even though we knew it was true.
Yeah, well, he didn't hold back and you didn't hold back either. And,
no.
And apart from meeting and speaking with David Koresh, you also did the same with his disciples. And you must have been really haunted by what they told you and, of course, what unfolded.
I was haunted at the time because I looked at all these... I had 2 beautiful young children myself back in Melbourne, and I looked at the faces of these innocent, vulnerable children, and I knew in my gut one day something bad was going to happen there. I wasn't exactly sure what was going to happen, but I knew something bad was going to happen. And even now, 30 years on, I look back and I'm just so sorry for what happened, and I remember those little kids' faces like it was yesterday.
Yeah. Marty, thank you so much for reliving this extraordinary story. Thank you again.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Martin King, and it really is hard to believe that it was 30 years ago.